My name is Laura Mullen, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, our major reference works worth the investment, sponsored by Elsevier and featuring Stuart Belcher, Marketing Manager for the Major Reference and Continuity Publishing Program within Elsevier, and Alistair Morrison, Senior Product Manager at Elsevier ScienceDirect. Today's discussion is one in a series of sponsored webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free to users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few features of the webinar software. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. Along the left-hand side, you will also see a Q&A panel that you can use to submit questions or comments. We'll spend some time responding to your questions during the program, so please do feel free to submit these throughout the program. And finally, please note that today's program will be recorded and all registrants will receive follow-up instructions on how to access the archived version. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our panel for today. Stuart Belcher is the Marketing Manager for the Major Reference and Continuity Publishing Program within Elsevier. He has worked in academic publishing for over 10 years in both marketing and product management roles covering both print and online products. Alistair Morrison is a Senior Product Manager at Elsevier ScienceDirect, responsible for online books and reference works. He has over 20 years of experience in information publishing at Congressional Information Service, LexisNexis, and Elsevier. He has an M.L.S. from the University of Maryland. And now I'd like to get us started by turning things over to Stuart Belcher. Stuart?
Thank you, Laura, and thank you everybody for attending here today. As Laura mentioned, my name is Stuart Belcher, and I'm the Marketing Manager here for our Major Reference Works and Continuity Program. And as you might be able to tell from my accent, I'm based in the UK, here in Oxford, so it's about 7 p.m. for me, and I think it's 2 for you guys. So the topic of our session today is your budget stretched. We all know there's a lot of reference content available free online. So why are major reference works from publishers like Elsevier and other publishers still a really good investment? We understand, that content is expensive, and your budgets aren't always growing to keep pace with all the products which you'd like to purchase. Researchers are collaborating more and more, and this is where funding is going in that direction, and therefore there's a much greater need for more access to a wider selection of foundation information to help them collaborate more effectively. And at the same time, as mentioned in the topic here, there's so much new information available online in different formats beyond the publisher, and it can be quite difficult to manage your collections accordingly for this way. So publishers like us really need to respond to the changing environment. Major reference works haven't changed massively in the last decade, and we're really starting to catch up and do some new things which we'd like to talk to you a little bit more about as well. We'll introduce to you reference modules, which are a product which launched last September, and my colleague Alistair Morrison, who's a Senior Product Manager here at Elsevier and was responsible for working on that, will give you a bit of a demo so you can have a tour of some of the major features there. But before we go any further, I think it would be really useful just to get to know each other a little bit better. You might have noticed as you came in, we had a quick poll to get an understanding of where we're all from and all of you guys attending. So as you can see, if you can see it in front of you now, I believe you should be able to. Most of you guys are university librarians, are college librarians here as well. Looks like there's a couple of publishers on board, and your responsibilities seem to be reference, subject, information gathering and literacy librarian, and a range of things. So it looks like you're all here for the right session, so that's great. So before we go any further, it's important, I think, to frame what we mean by reference works and why they're important. Different publishers have varying definitions of what is a major reference work. Here at Elsevier, we're pretty clear in terms of it's large collections of articles that really go to provide the foundations of a subject. Now, being a STM publisher, the content which we're responsible for is quite high level and involved. But it serves a number of purposes, really. Its main thing is to provide a summary of the state of knowledge in a field at that particular time. And here we have two main types. We break it down as encyclopedia articles, which you'll be familiar with. They're typically organized alphabetically. They're about 10 pages or thereabouts summaries of an area. Comprehensive articles we also cover, so comprehensives and treatises, and these go into a little bit more depth. They're organized by subjects, and they're typically about 50 pages in length. And why are these important? Well, they're a fantastic place to start research. No matter what stage of research you are, they give a great overview and enable you to come up to speed with an area very, very quickly. They're fantastic for those who find themselves a fish out of water, which, as more interdisciplinary research takes place, is more and more common. So you can be at quite high level and you might be collaborating in a different area and need to get up to speed fast. And these reference works do a great job of doing that. They're also perfect for teaching. They enable you to your researchers to get a good understanding of an area quite fast, and a great springboard to other content that they'll find elsewhere. We'll always find that the various citations and information will highlight some of the most important areas in the field. So they're very important, and they're an important program for us here at Elsevier. And they're significant publishing undertakings, taking many years to bring to market, and involve a great number of people. So that's what reference works are. Now, if we move to the next slide, you'll be able to see our program here at Elsevier. We have a very established program. We typically publish approximately 13 new titles a year. These are kind of split but evenly pretty much between encyclopedias. We've got 7 publishing this year, and you can see some of the titles we have forthcoming. We also have 6 comprehensives and treatises coming out this year. As far as splits goes, we have half of them will be new titles, and half of them will be new editions of titles. And new editions tend to come out whenever there's enough content in an area, enough updates that need to be made. Typically, at least a third of the content must be updated before we can release a new edition, and therefore they tend to get updated every sort of 3 to 5 years, and sometimes longer in some cases. Information in our major reference works sort of portfolio is available in print, and it's also available on ScienceDirect. And recently, it's now a case that more and more people are receiving and accessing information online, and that's certainly true with major reference works. Most people accessing MRWs on our program are accessing it on ScienceDirect online. So we have a little question for you next, just to keep you involved, really. I'd like to know if you could let us know the most important issues for you when you're thinking about providing reference materials to researchers and the graduate students at your institution. So I can see those answers coming in now, and they seem to be pretty evenly split. Let's just have a little wait and just watch those change. But it looks like we're still pretty gradually moving here from print to electronic media is the biggest one. Budget, unsurprisingly, is growing. Lack of awareness and increasing discoverability of reference materials seems to be important, and integrating it into centralized search. So it's a very, very even mix I can see there. Not so much concern about replacing the outdated editions. So that's really interesting. Thank you for completing that. So let's move on to the next slide. The reference landscape, as I alluded to earlier, has changed dramatically in the last few years particularly, but the last decade or so definitely. is something that we're aware of as publishers, and you are definitely experiencing, I know, and we hear many times, how this is impacting you as librarians. There's now so much information available for researchers of this reference type foundational content that getting started can be a real challenge. We know, and we're here time and time again, that where do researchers start? Typically, it's Google or other related search engines. It's the starting point, and they get many great results often, but so many that it's very difficult to search through and find out necessarily what's relevant for them. It can be very time-consuming, and it's really not ideal. Wikipedia is developed as a really strong go-to place for foundational content, and it's very good in many ways. It's well organized. It's easy to see when articles have been updated. There's a great deal of information available there, and there's many reasons why people turn to that. I know that I do regularly for everyday searches, but there's a few major flaws with Wikipedia in that it really lacks the editorial direction of a traditional reference would bring. And while it might be current and to a certain extent good enough in some cases, the fact that, and that's kept really by anyone, the fact that anybody can update information or an article on there, and that really lies in the problem. You don't have to be an expert to enter an article there. It can be amended by anybody, and also it's quite anonymous. There's no requirement for anybody to update or enter who they actually are updating information, so it really can't be relied upon for scientific research, and it wouldn't be something that's suitable for citing. So it's clear that reference works are trustworthy. They have that editorial integrity, but maybe people are going elsewhere because they need access to more information and need access to current information. So we really need to buck up our ideas, and we need to change our offering. And this is what we, as Elsevier, and a number of other publishers are starting to do. We're starting to amend and change this changing landscape and try and provide the right balance between trustworthy and current content. So we feel that we need to change in a number of ways. We need to free articles from the constraints of the traditional publishing cycle. We need to move beyond the book. Essentially, our offering has always been, up until very recently, and we'll talk about that a little bit further in a moment, we've been constrained by the traditional major reference work process. And while we've moved online, we've been looking at providing the book type format. The problems with this really are that it takes, as I said, many years to bring an article, to bring a whole major reference work into fruition and get it online. So we need to start publishing at the article level and not at the title level. We need to stay current. We need to be constantly looking to change and make frequent updates to information so that people can rely on it for currency and use it in their research confidently. We need to provide clarity in terms of when article updates have been made. I can look at a beer bottle these days and see its born date and its expiry date, and we need to start to do that ourselves and be really clear. We need to provide more content. There's no need anymore to restrict things just to 5, 10, 15 volumes. You can provide a lot more content and cover a whole area. But the challenge in terms of offering more content is that it needs to be easy to navigate. So it's very important that we provide structure and guidance and make it much more easy to discover, and for you as librarians to drive usage among your patrons and make it a real core part of their research in the first place that they want to go when they're starting on and embarking on a research project. And obviously, if we're providing more content and we're updating it continuously, then this requires us to provide new pricing models. If we want to offer a lot of content, we need to make it more affordable, we need to be more flexible, and need to make it easier on your budget. So Elsevier, like other publishers, are starting to move and take these points on board. So in 2013, we launched reference modules. And I'd like to just tell you a little bit about reference modules and why we did them and how we put them together before I pass you on to Alistair Morrison, who's a product manager, who will give you a quick tour just to show you some of the main features and how they sit in ScienceDirect, which is where this is hosted. So we launched, as I mentioned, in 2013. And we focused on two areas where we had a great collection of traditional major reference works. And we looked to rebuild the reference experience really from the ground up. So we started where we were strong. We looked at Earth systems and environmental sciences and chemistry, molecular sciences and engineering, and recruited an expert editorial board to examine the fields and map it out for us. We looked then at the content that we had available to us and we mapped it against the subject area as a whole and made sure that we had adequate coverage. We went through all of those articles and checked them for currency, making sure that everything in there was up to date, as up to date as it could be. And any articles that we felt were missing, any areas which were weak, they went through and identified articles that were required and found the person to write that article. So these launched on ScienceDirect in September 2013, as I mentioned. And the objective is to continually maintain these, grow them, and commit to ensuring that they stay up to date, that they're trustworthy and reliable. So they're really the perfect offering for the modern researcher. We've got some flexible pricing options, and we're looking to grow into new areas, and we'll be adding further reference modules later this year and further into the future. But importantly for us, we're going to continue to focus on the program as a whole. We're not moving away from doing traditional reference works. We have a very strong program for 2014 and 15 and beyond. We'll continue to publish approximately 13 for the foreseeable future in print on ScienceDirect as EMRWs, but also adding to this with reference modules, and it'll be an interesting experience to see how they evolve. So before I pass you over to Alistair to give you a quick tour of these reference modules, I'd like to just give you a quick rundown of some of the information and some of the content that they include, so you really get a feel for their size and their breadth. So the first one we launched is Earth Systems Environmental Sciences. As you can see there, it contains content from 19 of our existing major reference works, including new titles which are published in 2013, and we'll be adding to that significantly this year. We have about 3,800 articles from about 4,000 contributors, and we've got many, many images there. If we look at the other one which we did, it was chemistry, molecular sciences and chemical engineering, and there you'll see content from 22 major reference works, and it doesn't mean that every single article is in there. We've had our editorial board go through and check every single one for currency and relevance. So yeah, I mean, this has been our answer to it. I think the easiest way for you to get an understanding of what this means and what this looks like is to give you a demonstration. So I'd like to pass over to Alistair Morrison, who's our product manager, who's worked on bringing these to market, so he can give you a bit of a tour, and I'll be back for some questions.
Okay, thank you, Stu. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Okay. module in chemistry, molecular sciences, and chemical engineering on my monitor. And since I can only hear Stu, you have to tell me that you're seeing that. Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to go through this and give a quick overview of some of the features of this and focus a little bit on some questions that I think this audience might be interested in, including some search strategy and things like that that work in the new reference module. As Stu said, my name is Alistair Morrison. I'm a product manager at ScienceDirect. I've been working on this project for a couple of years now, and it's been a lot of fun. I've worked with the editorial boards of both reference modules and the editorial group within Elsevier. I've got to either participate, observe, or read the results of a lot of user studies that we did leading into the project and then during the project too. So I've learned a lot of interesting things about how scientific research is done and the great diversity in the way that scientists manage their research and deal with this issue of acquiring foundational knowledge at the beginning of their research. So just to start with, I'll give a quick overview of the 3 screens that are involved in reference modules. It's a pretty straightforward product. It's a radically new design. It's not really built like a book, or if it is, it's built like one very, very large book. It's not a traditional publishing approach for us, and I think that'll come clear. This, the homepage you see here gives you access to all the articles within each module. You're looking right now at the Chemistry Molecular Science homepage, and over here we have the homepage for Earth Systems and Environmental Science. Actually, we're looking at the editor-in-chief right now. There we go. So that's the homepage for Earth Systems. The next page down in the hierarchy, if you will, is the topic page. You can see over here at left, we have a subject hierarchy that lets you browse all the content in the reference module. And in the center, there's a list of articles within the module. When you're on the home page, you have access to all the articles in the module. And you can see there's a counter here showing you that there are 4,227 reference articles in Earth Systems and Environmental Science. There's a search box here that will let you search across all those articles. And there's also interaction in the subject hierarchy that I mentioned. One thing I'd like to highlight for this group is that the URLs that you see on the screen are persistent. So if you catalog these using our MARC records, you would get this URL and it would take the user to this page, but you can also create direct links from library guides or other resources that you might want to have on your library website that would go to this page, or also, quite interestingly, down to the topic pages underneath the reference module. I've now clicked on Atmospheric Sciences, and I'm on the topic page for Atmospheric Sciences. It has a concept ID up here in the URL, and you can use that URL. You don't need to include the parameters behind the question mark, but you can grab that URL and also use it in a link to information about atmospheric sciences. Everything I'm showing you right now is part of the free layer on ScienceDirect, so anyone can come in and browse the subject hierarchy, read these introductory articles on some of the topic pages, or search across the content to see what kind of articles we have on particular things. So if you're curious about the product, I encourage you to do that later. You can just go to ScienceDirect.com and I'll show you how to find this content a little bit later on. So within the subject hierarchy, there's some other behaviors I want to call your attention to. So on this topic page, you can see it now, adjust to that. The subject hierarchy has the sort of traditional plus and minus, expand, collapse icons, allowing you to see what's in the subject hierarchy without actually navigating to it. if you click on a term, you go to the topic page for that term. Many of the topic pages, like this one on geoscience, have a featured article, and this is an article that has been identified by the editorial board as a good introduction to that subject area. As I scroll down, you can see that we also have articles related to geoscience below that. In this case, the article is actually written by the editor-in-chief, Scott Elias. These featured articles are also free. They're actually full articles, not just the snippet you see here. And if you click on the title, it'll take you to the full article. So that's a bit of a free resource that we're making available that way. The other thing that I need to explain about topic pages that's a little bit different is that when you search on them, you're searching just within the topic. And the approach that we've used here is an attempt to combine the best features of browse and search. The drawback of browse, of course, is that if you are not on the same wavelength as the editor or the indexer who decided where to put each article, you might have a hard time navigating to the article that you need for your research. And the drawback to search is that, of course, you have to know what you're looking for before you look for it. So with this, you can browse down to a level that makes sense to you and then search within it. The way that we've designed this is that all the articles that are related to geosciences appear on this topic page. I've got, as you can see, 1,567 articles. Now, not all of those articles are directly related to the concept of geosciences. Some of them are related to the subordinate concepts, such as Earth history, dating techniques, etc., that you can see here in the subject hierarchy. The articles at the top are directly related to geosciences, so we've sorted these articles by their location in the subject hierarchy. So what this means is that as you go down to more detailed subjects, you are drilling down to the content to more and more specific results list of articles here in the subject hierarchy. So now I'm on Earth history. If I go down to a more detailed page, I'd like to show you. Here's a page that only has 29 reference articles, and you can see it's missing that topic article. We wrote topic articles for the top 2 or 3 levels of the topics, but not the more granular topics like this. We will be adding them as we feel they're necessary, but they don't all have them. Okay, let me go into an article just to give you a quick view of that, and then I'll come back and do a couple more detailed things. The article is the standard layout for ScienceDirect articles. It looks pretty much the same as a journal article or a book chapter. The big difference, of course, is that the subject hierarchy is shown at left, but the traditional article outline is also here. If you click on the tab, you can switch to see the outline of the article. If I turn off the thumbnails, you can see the table of contents, or you can, if you're a visual learner, you can show the thumbnails and skip down to the images that interest you. Okay, let me go back to the home page here for our systems and talk about a couple things. What I'm going to go over in the next part is just talking about how we tried to design the first of these was that the content had to be up to date. And this is, of course, the challenge that Stuart was talking about with regards to our traditional publishing program, where we're able to update, bring out a new edition of a major reference work only every 3, 5, or 7 years. And in the case like that, if a particular article is out of date, of course, it would have to wait for the entire reference work to be updated with the next edition. So we've broken free of that, and we now have the ability to add articles whenever we want, and we can publish individual articles within the reference module. And the editorial board has taken advantage of this to add content as they wanted to, as they felt was necessary. So what we've done to make this clear is we've added a date here that says current as of. And that is basically our date stamp saying that as of that date, the material that you're seeing here, material that you're seeing here is vouchsafed to be current as of that date. There can be a couple of meanings of that date, and I'll show you some examples of that. The other thing that was really important to researchers was that the content be trustworthy and authoritative, and finally that the content be comprehensive. In terms of trustworthiness, our greatest asset, and really our greatest asset for everything we're doing here, is our editorial board. On the home page, you can find the editor's biographies, and there's a page here that gives you a picture of each editor and a short vitae, including their institutions that they're associated with, as well as their areas of research. So this is the editorial board for the Earth Systems module, and if I go back to chemistry, you can see that we have it here also for them on the home page, and you can see the editorial board for the Chemistry, Molecular Sciences, and Chemical Engineering module, beginning with the editor-in-chief, Jan Radic, and here are the other contributors to the editorial board. So in the articles that are contained in here, we have a sort of similar thing for the individual authors. Each article in reference modules is attributed to an author and written by an actual author. And if you are on the article and click on the name of the author, you will always at least get the author's affiliation and their name. You'll often get a vitae like the one we have here that includes a picture and, again, the same kind of information that we had for the editorial board. So the authority of the articles is communicated by the editorial board and the authors that we have. This article that we're looking at is a good example of one of our advanced type articles. It's from one of the comprehensive reference works, Comprehensive Chirality. You can see at the top that we cite both sources for this material. As Stuart said, we started with material that we had, that the reference works where we already had really good coverage of the subject area. And what we've done is select articles from those reference works and included them under the reference module. In that case where we have an article being shared by both resources, we identify it like this at the top. If you click on the link to the reference module, you'll go back to the reference module homepage. If you click on the link to Comprehensive Chirality, you'll go to the homepage for that book with information about the book. In some cases like this one, we've used a great deal of the articles, a great percentage of the articles from the reference work in reference modules. In other cases, we've been more selective, but in every case, we've left out things such as the front matter and materials like that aren't really part of the reference module. When you're in a page like this, you can also look at the bibliographic information, and that will include the citation, a sample citation, as well as information about when the article is reviewed and things like that. This article was first published in 2012, and then it was reviewed again as part of this project. And so it's got a review date here. And you see this date also appears over here in the body of the article, and this is the current as of date. So the current as of date is sort of a shorthand. It just really says the article is good as of this date. If you come to the bibliographic information section, you'll get the details on what that actually means, and you can see what the last action was that affected the currency of that article. Like every article in ScienceDirect, the articles are also available in PDF and can be downloaded by users, and there's no digital rights or any kind of control like that. They're free to use them for scholarly sharing and things like that under the same terms as the rest of our licensed content. Okay, so I've just shown you an example of an article that happens in cases where the editorial board reviews an article and decides that it's no longer current and it needs to be updated. So I'm going to go to an article here that's from the Encyclopedia of Separation Science. And we did actually use quite a bit of content from this encyclopedia in the reference module, but a lot of the content also is a little bit out of date. And so what happened was the author who was assigned to review this content made a determination that it was out of date and it needed to be updated, and then went ahead and created a new article. And you can see here, what we're looking at here is an article that is in the encyclopedia, but it's not part of the reference module. You can see it on the left, it doesn't have the subject hierarchy, and at the top, it doesn't cite the reference module as one of its sources. And down here is a cross-reference that we have put in place whenever we've updated an article from a reference work for use in a reference module. And you can see there's a new article, has the same title, chromatography, that's now in the reference module in chemistry, molecular sciences, and chemical engineering. And if I click on that link, it takes me to this new article, which, as you can see at the top, only has one source. It no longer lists the original reference work as its source. It's now a freestanding article in the reference work. There's a footnote here after the title, and if you click on it, it will open up in the little workspace area here the change history. So there's a, you could also scroll down to see it, by the way. The workspace is simply a convenience that we've created across ScienceDirect that allows you to pin certain content over in the right-hand side while you're still reading in the center pane. In this case, our change log. And the change log just keeps track of changes that are made to this article. Now, over time, this article will be reviewed again, and depending on advances in the field, changes might need to be made or sections might need to be added. And if that happens, it'll be noted here in the change log. But the interesting thing is that the article will retain its identity. The unique identifier that we have here at the top and the DOI that we have here in the bibliographic information will not change. So the article will persist, and the links to it will still go to the same article, and the changes that the article has required over the years will be noted in the change log. Occasionally, the editorial board or the author will decide that the changes to the article are so significant that it's no longer the same article, in which case we'll go through the same sort of updating procedure that I just described. One difference between the one question that we've had about differences between the reference works and the reference modules is the question of access. If we were in an article that had both sources listed as on it, the reference module and the original reference work, then users who had access to either one of those sources or both would be able to read the full text of the article and download it. In this case, where it's only in the reference module, only those users who are entitled to the reference module itself would be able to get the full text of this article. And that means that the updating content will be available just to the folks who get the reference module, whereas the people who have access to the original Encyclopedia of Separation Science will have the original article, they'll see the cross-reference, but they won't have full text to the reference module version. Okay, the next feature I'd like to talk about is comprehensiveness. This was something that was also very important to the users that we surveyed. Pardon me. And there's not too much I can go on that. I think the best thing to do really would be to encourage you to browse a little bit in the subject hierarchy, but I'll do a little bit in that area. If we go back to the chemistry homepage, which you can get to by clicking the top of the subject hierarchy here, you can see, just scrolling down, the types of things that are covered by the chemistry module. If I expand interfacial chemistry, you can see the subjects below that, including applications of surface and interface phenomena, things like that. If I go down a little bit further, you can see that we have other things that involve sort of more interdisciplinary subject areas. There's physical chemistry, but it has very, very broad coverage. As you can see, there are over 4,000 articles in this. And one of the things that's been really exciting about this project is that creating the subject hierarchy gave the editorial board the opportunity to review all the content that Elsevier had in the reference program related to chemistry and to look for gaps. In the past, if we wanted to cover a certain subject area, it really had to make sense within the context of a reference work. So, an article in comprehensive chirality is going to have something to do somehow with chirality, similarly for the other traditional reference works. But with this much, much broader subject area that we have now, sort of chemistry and chemical engineering, we are able to identify subject areas within that broad topic that we just don't have any articles on. And so we've actually commissioned articles to fill in some of these gaps. So it's been a really kind of exciting freedom, as Stuart mentioned earlier. We freed ourselves from the book model, and that was really one of the more exciting developments of that, was that we were able to fill in some of these gaps with specific articles. And I think this speaks to something important. One of the questions that Stuart posed at the beginning was, what is the value of reference works from publishers? And I think a key value that publishers and really the editorial boards that publishers employ are that they provide a curation, if you will, or management of the content. There's a large acquisitions effort to recruit authors to write the articles that the editorial board has determined are necessary. So we commission content that's missing so that we can fill in the gaps. And that's different from what you would get, say, on a Wikipedia, where content is added because somebody wants to do it, but not particularly because there's an overarching design to it. And it's actually very interesting to take, especially the chemistry module, and compare some of the subjects here to what you could find on Wikipedia. There's actually a very large percentage, I haven't calculated it, but it's anecdotally I can tell you it's a very large number of subjects where we have a topic page like this that there really is no corresponding coverage in Wikipedia. And that speaks to another difference too with the popular sources. I know I'm sort of preaching to the choir here about drawbacks of Wikipedia, but the other drawback is, of course, that it's a popular work, whereas these are reference works that are intended for scientists, for researchers, graduate students, upper-level undergraduates. The fish out of water scenario that Stuart described was really our focus all along. And what that means is that we're trying to support someone who is probably quite accomplished in his or her own field, but is maybe venturing out to do some interdisciplinary research or is starting a new project and needs to get some background information. And these sorts of researchers, they need genuine scientific knowledge, not just sort of a popular summary of the topic. And so especially our comprehensive articles will provide that kind of in-depth knowledge that brings them up to speed and allows them to go on to the next stage of the research. Finally, just to point to the last thing that our researchers told us they needed, and that was the context for the information that they're looking at. My favorite comment from our user studies was a researcher who said that I really don't need more content. What I need is more context. And I hope you can see from the subject hierarchy and the way that the articles and the topic pages interact with it that we've really structured everything around an intelligent classification scheme, and that throughout the interface you can see where you are in that scheme, where the article you're reading falls in the subject hierarchy, or in this case here, the topic page that I'm looking at falls in that subject hierarchy. Finally, I won't go much further than that. I just wanted to mention a couple other things for using the product. One thing is, if you want to get to the reference modules in ScienceDirect, a couple ways to come directly to these home pages is, well, if you're in the reference modules, you can always go to the home page by clicking on the logo on the title in an article or on the top of the subject hierarchy. The other way that you can find them is in the search box at the top of ScienceDirect. There's a search by journal book title, and if you start typing reference module in there, it will bring up the two reference modules that we have. And finally, you can also get there by doing publication browse, and it will be located under the R's for reference modules, and all of them will be that way. Oh dear, Java just interrupted my presentation. Okay, I think I'm back. And that's the main highlight. I didn't show you everything I wanted to, but I see we're getting how you could combine the subject browse with a search. So I'm going to browse down to oceanography, and then I'm going to do a search on the topic of the effects of global warming on invertebrates. So if I type in warming, ocean, and invertebrate, you can see I started with 536 articles. It's now gone down to 36 articles where these terms occur, and you can see some tools here at the top to help you manage it. There's the introductory and advanced filter. We've tagged every article, well, most of the articles as advanced or introductory. The advanced articles tend to be longer, those comprehensive articles Stuart mentioned that can be up to 50 pages longer. The introductory articles are more encyclopedia type. They're short and give a quick introduction to the subject. You can filter for those results by clicking on the top of the page here. And now I'm showing the introductory articles. If I click on advanced, I think there's 27 advanced articles that meet my search criteria. So that's just a little flavor of the kinds of tools that are available to you when you're trying to do searches within the reference module. So with that, I'd like to turn control back and leave some time for questions. And I'm going to keep the reference module up here on my page in case there's anything that people want to see.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alistair, for that great demonstration. Then please fire away. I can see a few of them coming in now. One of the questions which came in from Kathleen Matthews is, I think, a good one for you, Alistair, actually, which is if I cite an article from a certain date and it changes, because as these articles do, they regularly change and can be updated, what impact does that have on citations? Do you want to cover that, Alistair?
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated. If the article is one that's shared between the reference module and the original reference work, the citation is simply the original reference work. In cases where the article is a freestanding article in the reference module, its date would change, and our recommended citation is to cite the date, but it could change, and it's sort of like citing an encyclopedia article in that way. It's useful to cite the date on which you got the information. The hope is that the links to the article, such as a DOI or a citation-based link, would find the article, and the change log would explain any changes that had occurred since that date. So we feel that proper citation behavior is to include the date so that the reader knows that you looked at it, say, in January of 2014, and when the reader looks at it again in December of 2015, they can see that, oh, a new section was added that might affect the way that they interpret the cited material or the section of your paper that cited it or things like that. The other thing to consider here, too, is, of course, that they are reference works and are lightly cited. They're not cited as heavily as the journal literature and not part of the scholarly record in the way that journal literature is.
Great. And Kathleen adds to that, if I want to read the article I cited, is it still available if it's been updated?
No, we're not versioning. We're not keeping older versions of articles. We're trying to control that with a changelog. The rationale there was that it's meant to be a reference work, and if something is wrong or outdated and needs to be changed, then the reference work should always reflect the current state of the science. And we felt that the changelog could manage the need to see what has changed without having to carry along a permanent version of the old article. So that was partly an editorial decision, but partly a decision driven by talking to researchers in our user studies.
Thanks, Alistair. And I'd add one thing to that, in that if it were if an article was updated and you wanted to see the original article, and maybe you had access to that original article because you previously purchased an MRW with articles which seemed to be already up to date, and that article was then updated, and you still had access to the old article because you bought it as a perpetual, then you would obviously have access. But if it changed and you didn't have access to the original EMRW where it came from, and it now only belongs to the reference module, you'd have access to the article on the reference module, but not the previous original version, which belonged to an EMRW. I guess that's a slight variation. Kathleen has a question about how it impacts on pricing if you have a number of MRWs. That's something which we haven't massively covered. I won't go into the pricing in too much detail. You can certainly talk to your local sales representative who'd be glad to talk you through the various options. But basically we have a couple of options. We have their subscription products, I should add, and that fits in with the fact that it's constantly changing and evolving. So it's a subscription product. We have two levels, really. There's access only, which is you have access, but should you choose to cancel, you would no longer have access to any of those articles. And then the other option we have is Access Plus, where for an additional cost, should you cancel, you would be able to transfer your spending up to 5 years that you spent on reference modules onto perpetual reference works. Now, how does that impact if you already have a number of MRWs already accessible on ScienceDirect? Then there are discounts available which factor that in. So we've absolutely understand that you wouldn't want to purchase the same content twice, and there are discounts available to factor that in. Corey asked if there was an advanced search feature, but I think since the question came in, I think Alistair covered that quite well in terms of we have the general search, we have the hierarchy, and you can use the two together to get quite a sophisticated level of searching. The other thing to add to that would be that being on ScienceDirect, reference modules sit effectively as a separate major reference work and treated as such within the broader ScienceDirect offering. So obviously advanced searching functionality and things is available there, and they can be highlighted, and a reference module can be selected as an individual source. Is that fair enough?
If you wouldn't mind passing back the screen real quick, and
sure.
I'll show that. But there's an advanced search feature in ScienceDirect that you can use on all content. So can you see my screen now, Stuart?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay. So this is when you go to the home page of the reference module, you still have the ScienceDirect banner at the top, and the advanced search link is there. And also you can also, if you want to search it this way, if you search through the banner, you're going to get your results in the generic ScienceDirect result list. So you won't be able to interact with the subject hierarchy there. If you go to advanced search, it should persist the source there. If you go to, and you can go to reference works. I don't think it did persist it. If you go to the reference works here on the advanced search area, the reference modules are down under the R's here in the, that's the subjects. if you change it to specific reference work, and then you'll be able to locate the reference modules and do an advanced search that way. Yeah, so there's reference module in chemistry, and you can do advanced search, or you can do the free-form expert search using Boolean operators. So.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alistair. That illustrated much better than I could say in words, so that's really helpful. Mary Moran has a question which I think is probably, again, directed to you, Alistair, with regards to understanding that all of our subjects are authorized. Example being, if I put in warming into our example, would that cross-reference to climate change compared to global warming?
Let me go back here. So the subject hierarchy is it's a subject hierarchy, not a full taxonomy. What you would get is so by that what I mean by that is there are no entry points. So for instance, if we have global change as a subject, we don't have an entry point for global warming or climate change. Actually, I think climate change might be a subtopic, but you wouldn't find an entry in the subject hierarchy that said climate change, see global change. So you would have to find the term that the editorial board you can search. The searching would be against the full text of the articles, and we don't have the synonym type and metonym conversion that your question points to yet. We're looking at some solutions to that probably will go beyond just this one part of ScienceDirect to include sort of an enriched search across ScienceDirect. We have sort of simple things such as pluralization and stemming going on in the search, but we don't have the synonym equations and things like that yet. So you would actually have to find a match in the search terminology, in the full text search, or identify it by browsing.
Thank you, Alistair. I think it's time to wrap up now. So if we can just share back to myself for our final slide, I can let people know find more information. So yeah, thank you so much everybody for joining us. I hope you found it useful. I'm sorry that we haven't been able to answer all the questions there, but if you'd like to contact myself directly, my email is pretty easy to find. I'm s.belcher@elsevier.com, and Alistair Morrison is a.morrison@elsevier.com, so pretty easy to find. You can talk to your sales representative and reach out to us that way. If you're coming to ALA, then please stop by and talk to us. Both Alistair and myself will be there at booth 1207 for the duration of the show, so we should be around, so we'd love to talk to you. If you'd like to find out more about reference modules, you can visit the Info ScienceDirect reference module site, or indeed when you're there, you can also find about our MRW program as a whole, and indeed our whole books program, so there's lots of information available. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been really great.
Yes, thank you very much. I very much appreciate your time and your interest.
Well, it looks like we are ready to wrap up our time together. I'd like to give a virtual round of applause to our panel for sharing some really great information today. We appreciate your time and your insights. As a reminder, we have recorded today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from ACRL and Choice that will include instructions on how to access the archived version. Thanks again to all of our participants for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Have